Hi witches, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching. I'm Ren, the Cemetery Witch, and today we're going to be talking about tarot. I'm going to be showing you 5 decks that I really love that I think are perfect for beginners. We're going to have a look at my experiences with tarot, my relationship and journey with it. I'm going to talk about my first tarot deck, which I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to move on to the other decks I have. I've got 3 that I think are perfect for beginning from scratch, and then I've got 2 that are also perfect for beginners that are perhaps slightly more intermediate. So if you're into witchcraft, you're into tarot, or you're looking to start tarot and you're not sure where to go, then this is the video for you. I'm also going to be showing you some books at the end that I think will be helpful on your tarot journey or for developing and deepening your tarot practice. So stay tuned. So I got my first tarot deck at about age 15. I don't know what the circumstances were surrounding this. I don't know if it was a birthday present or a Christmas present or maybe a reward for doing well at school, but I know that my mum organised my first deck for me. I was collecting a magazine collection at the time called Mind, Body and Spirit magazine. It came with a ring binder, and each magazine you would get something to go in the ring binder and then a gift like a crystal or an oracle card or some incense, and it was all about witchcraft and health and well-being and spirituality, and it did cover tarot. So that is how I became aware of tarot. I also had my mum and dad's book, Cult and Occult, so I was very much aware of divination at age 15, which was quite different to my peers, and I must have asked for a tarot deck at some point. So my mum bought me the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This is the actual deck, so I've had this for over 25 years and it's travelled around with me. It makes sense, really, to be honest, that she would have bought me this deck. I imagine her going on to an internet search engine as someone who didn't really know what she was looking for, and this would be the deck that would come up first. We'll go into the Rider-Waite-Smith deck in a minute, but yeah, it makes total sense that she would have bought this for me. It's popular, it's cheap, it's accessible, and I didn't really know what I was doing with it. I received it, I was really happy with it, I cherished it, I looked after it, but I didn't really have a clue. I did buy a book on tarot, one called Tarot Made Easy. Did it make it easy for me? Not really. And so I went quite a few years reading about it, researching it, but not having an idea that it had a system and that it was actually quite easy to learn. So there was a period of time where I didn't do much with my tarot at all. I just sort of had the cards and looked after them, but they became my friend. I loved my cards. I loved flicking through them and looking at the images. Quite different in those days for what most 15-year-olds would be doing. Then in my 20s, I decided to embark upon doing a course. It was about 6 months long, and it was really, really in depth, and it laid out an easy to understand system. And this was brilliant. It helped me learn the cards, and I developed a really, really deep and meaningful relationship with them. So much so that I started reading in my late 20s for just extra money and for fun. So I did this when my daughter was little, and I was a single parent, so she'd be up in bed at night and I would do tarot readings in the evening. I also had a wonderful supportive neighbour who used to get all her friends round for the evening, and then she'd send them over one at a time and I would do them readings. And I assume I was good at it. People came back, people booked repeat readings, and yeah, I just really enjoyed doing it. I always got good feedback, and I learned sort of several meanings to each card. When I say several meanings, I mean the deeper levels and the deeper layers on top of, you know, the basic meaning. So I got to know these really, really intimately. And then I met my husband, so he was my then partner at the time, and we moved away. We moved about 3 hours down the road. I didn't have any tarot clients anymore. I didn't think about doing it over the phone or over the internet. That wasn't really how things worked back in those days. And so I completely lost my connection with tarot. And when I say I lost my connection, I completely disconnected from the cards. It was a very, very stressful ensuing 5-6 years. There was a lot going on. We had several family tragedies, lots of traumatic things to deal with, lots of stress, and I also became ill in this time as well. And then when it came to me picking up the cards, I realised I'd lost everything. I couldn't remember the basic meanings, and I'd lost all that information and all those insights that you pick up as a tarot card reader when you're doing spreads. So when you learn, right, when this card and this card come up together, this means this. So I lost all of that, and as you can imagine, when I went back to my cards, it was super frustrating, and my cognitive problems as a result of my issue with my heart and my several other chronic illnesses have made relearning them really, really difficult. But I've started on the journey of doing this. I'm about 4 years down the line now. It's taking me much longer. It's taken me 10 times longer than it did to initially learn them. And I would study for a couple of days. I would think I would have it down in my head, and then the next day I would go to recall the information and it would just be gone. And I can do that now, and it's like a blanket has been lifted, and I have started to be able to remember things from like 10 years ago that are just suddenly pinging into my head. So I don't know if it's this using my brain all the time. I'm looking after myself. I'm trying to stay well and healthy and reduce my stress levels, but it's all coming back to me now. And I'm at the stage now where I can make videos about tarot. I can do readings. I can use tarot again. I wouldn't say I'm quite back where I was. I know that will come now. So I'm not feeling as stressed about it. I don't know how much of this has been a bit of a mental block, but I'm feeling much better about my journey with tarot now, and I'm nearly back to square one, and not square one, but you know, square one, me being like, you know, doing okay at it. So I'm really happy about that. So yeah, that has been my journey. I would like to do some teaching. For the time being, it's going to be videos until I feel like I'm back at that stage, but I feel like that situation is not too far off now, and I'm so happy because I just absolutely love tarot. It's a wonderful tool for, you know, self-development, guiding the way, and yeah, I really enjoy it. So I hope you enjoy these decks that I've picked out. Let me know in the comments if you have any of these, what you think of them. I'd really like to hear all about your tarot experiences. So my first deck that I would recommend for beginners is the Rider-Waite-Smith, starting off with this deck. It's the most popular and widely used deck in the world. It's got 78 cards, which is split into the Major Arcana, which is 22 cards, and the Minor Arcana, which is 56 cards. So the Major Arcana is like those literal major milestones, and the Minor Arcana cards deal with the sort of the details, the day-to-day life, the more sort of pressing issues that are going on around you. It was created by A.E. Waite and illustrated by Pamela Colman Smith. So you'll hear people calling it the Rider-Waite deck. I call it the Rider-Waite-Smith deck because I think we should give a nod to the artist, because without the art and without this art, we wouldn't have this deck. They were both members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and Pamela Colman Smith, also known as Pixie, she was massively influenced by Eliphas Levi. He was a magician and occultist back in the 19th century, and so many of the occult symbols and the imagery found within these cards have been influenced by him and obviously by their time in the Golden Dawn. So it was published by the Rider Company in 1909, and this deck is the basis for many decks. So lots of decks actually work on the Rider-Waite-Smith system and that symbolism and symbology, and it really is the easiest thing to learn, I think. There are, of course, standalone decks that have their own images, their own archetypes, their own ideas, their whole own system. There are those decks out there and people can learn those from scratch, but I think this is the way to go. Many courses are based on this, many books and resources online. Many people teach the Rider-Waite-Smith system. They've got simple images in terms of design. They're very simple. I'd say that's quite a complex, busy card, but most of them are very simple images, but there is an abundance of symbolism in them. So it's not necessarily about learning by the book. When you get a tarot deck, it is about what's going on in the background as well. And there are astrological correspondences as taught by the Golden Dawn related to this deck. Now, I always say that when I'm choosing a deck, I like to look at the sun and the moon. And I find that if I resonate with these two cards, then I usually enjoy the deck and I'm going to get on with the deck. Other people have methods for doing that. Some just pick, you know, the colours or how they feel about the images generally. But for me, I always like to look at the sun and the moon. So you've got the feminine energies of the moon and then the masculine energies of the sun. And I just feel like that sets me up for the rest of the deck if I like those two. I like the very muted colours of these. I'm not sure if that's because this is like an original deck and they were originally, you know, they were created and published in 1909. So I don't know if these muted colours reflect that and the processes, the printing processes going on in that sort of that part of time, but I think they really help you learn them. There's not bright colours, they don't detract from what you are trying to convey and what you are learning. You can get Rider-Waite-Smith decks though in lots of variations. I've seen really beautiful pastel coloured ones, I've seen them with really bright colours, I've seen like gold and silver, foil ones. There are so many variations on this deck now. So if you want these same images and you don't want to stray from that because you're learning, but you want something a bit more colourful than these muted yellows and whites and oranges and greens, then there are variations on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So there's loads to choose from out there. So yeah, do your research. There is no harm in you buying yourself a deck. I know when I was younger, there was this thing that you couldn't buy yourself a deck, someone else had to buy it for you. No one ever said why or what would happen. I'm assuming, you know, you wouldn't connect with the cards and it would be bad luck and stuff like that, but that's rubbish. You can buy your own deck, and I think it makes sense for you to buy a deck that you feel really connected with, because then that is going to aid your reading. So that's my first suggestion, the Rider-Waite-Smith, and I'm going to show you some books at the end of the video that I think will really help you learn these cards and that system and this tarot journey. The next deck that I'm recommending for a beginner, so this could be you totally starting out from scratch, is the Druidcraft Tarot by Philip and Stephanie Carr-Gomm and illustrated by Will Worthington. So Philip Carr-Gomm, he's a psychologist, he's a druid, he's one of the leaders of the Order of Bard, Ovates and Druids, and the idea behind their deck is to use the magic of Wicca and Druidry to guide your life. So there is lots of Celtic symbology in here. There's strong Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. I'm just getting the cards out, and they're really beautiful and vibrant. They're quite big, so it's quite difficult to show you. They're big cards, which again though is perfect if you're a beginner because you can see the images really clearly. And there we have the sun and the moon, which I think are just gorgeous. And these are just an excellent move on. So if you've learned the Rider-Waite-Smith and you want a different deck because perhaps you're bored of it, or you just want to move on to something else, but you don't want to lose that imagery, then this is the deck for you. So this is the Ace of Pentacles. You can see there's a bear here coming out of this stone tomb or burial mound. So there's lots of imagery. There's lots of things that are going to dig up thoughts and feelings and intuitions that are going to help you read. But they are still simple enough. So there you've got the Two of Pentacles where she's like juggling the two balls. They still look like the Rider-Waite-Smith. So that is an excellent deck to either to learn from, just from scratch. You could use a Rider-Waite-Smith guide and then use these cards with it. That would work fine. But that is a really, really beautiful deck that I highly recommend. So I'll put all the details of these decks down in the description box. I think the next deck that I'm about to show you, so I actually bought this as my third deck. The next deck that I'm going to show you is actually my second deck. I'm not sure if you can still get that one. You'll see in a minute it's very old, but I'm certain you can get this one still. And I don't think I showed you did I show you the book at the beginning? I think I did, but that's the book anyway. And I think Will Worthington's done some others. I recognise his artwork. I think there's maybe like one or two other decks that he's done. He's definitely done some other art because he's got quite recognisable images. So my third deck to show you is actually the one that I got second, and it's called the Sacred Circle Tarot, and it's by Anna Franklin and illustrated by Paul Mason, and it comes with this huge book which I was just flicking through it earlier and I was really surprised to find that I had highlighted, which is really unusual for me. I don't normally, not deface, but I don't normally sort of mess around with books, but I guess because this was about learning something, I'd gone through it and highlighted stuff. So this again has got lots of Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, lots of Celtic imagery. So if you're into the Celtic tradition or the culture and you're aware of the symbolism, this might be a really good deck for you. I'll just dig out the cards that I want to show you. So yeah, first of all, we've got the Sun. And I think that is a really, really beautiful card. So when I saw that card, I was like, yeah, I want this deck. And then we've got the Moon, which is very, very different in energy and feel, which it is. The Sun and the Moon are polar opposites, they're dualities. So that is lovely. I've put this further down the line in terms of a deck for learning because they have changed some of the names. I still think you could learn the Rider-Waite-Smith system with this. Like I say, it's got strong Rider-Waite-Smith energy, but they have changed some of the names. So like, for example, Strength is the Warrior, and instead of a lion or a boar, like in the last deck, we've got a badger instead. So, but she's called the Warrior instead of Strength. So I really like that. I like the fact that they've called the Fool the Green Man. I think that is a great starting block. And they have done something really, really useful. So they have taken the minor arcana and they've given them colours. So you've got like a bluey purple for cups, which is obviously water. We've got a green for earth and pentacles. We've got yellow for air and swords, and red for fire and wands. So that really, really helps you learn that's magical symbolism which runs through the cards. And I really like the fact that they've got photographs of people and places. So that's Wayland Smithy. Let me find you a person. I did have the Warrior, didn't I? Let's show you her. She looks really cool. She looks like she's in some sort of like metal band. So they're like, they're photos and then digital art, and they look a bit clunky almost, but I actually think they're really charming because of that. I think they're super, super charming. So yeah, another great deck. They have named the minor arcana cards, so let me find one to show you. So we've got the Ten of Swords there, and we've got Disillusion. So again, this is really, really helpful for you to recall information or to help with your intuition and just to help bring stuff up that's going to help you in a reading. So really, really love this deck. The next deck I want to show you is Branches of the Celtic Tarot, and this is by Christopher Hughes and illustrated by Chris Down. This is a Celtic deck, as the name would suggest, and it's important to remember that the Celts were not a bloodline so much, but a culture. So there's lots of Celtic imagery in here. So if you enjoy that, this deck is perfect for you. It is a slightly more intermediate deck, which is why I'm doing this 4 out of 5. I think really you need to have got to grips with the RWS system. But as you can see, a lot of the images are similar. So there's only a variation in some of the cards, but it's really, really beautiful. It's really, really bright, and it's really inspiring. I love the dragons in here. I love the earthy tones and the beautiful shades of blue that Chris has used. So I actually sat for this deck. This is me here. Christopher Hughes didn't want the models who helped Chris to become the cards, so we look very, very different, many of us, to the images that we sat for. This is the Mother, so that would traditionally be the Empress. So this is what I mean about this being a slightly more intermediate deck. I think it's really important to learn the traditional names first before using decks that then change things up a little bit. But this is not a difficult deck by any means, but the artwork is just outstanding. So I want to show you the Sun and the Moon, both beautiful, and I just really like the images in these cards. So as you can see, there are some clooties hanging from the tree, which are bits of rag that are traditionally tied to a tree or a bush near a healing spring or river or stream. And the idea is that you would tie one on there and then healing would be yours, you know, if you have an ailment that needs to be healed. And I think that's really lovely, this idea of the hangman, of surrendering. Sometimes we need to surrender and stop and take a pause, and sometimes that's necessary for our healing. So there's lots of imagery in here that you can use in your reading. So this deck fuses several things: the basic teachings of the Rider-Waite-Smith system, the Kabbalistic way of life, and Celtic mythology and worldview. So if you want a slightly more colourful, interesting deck with depth, then that is a fantastic deck to go for. Again, I'm going to put all the information in the description below. And the last deck I want to show you, and I need to be fairly quick because the gardener is out and he's doing the strimming. This is probably my 6th attempt to film this video. There have been so many interruptions and it quite honestly is driven me a little bit mad. So you might be able to hear some strimming in the background. I can see he's getting closer, so I'm going to have to make this quick. But my last deck is much more of an intermediate deck, and it's called the Hyde Tarot by Dan Francis. He created this deck as he mourned the passing of his father. So it's really a journey of self-healing, and he used to go to a bird hide, hence the name, the Hyde Tarot, with some of his friends to sort of hang out and talk. I think he was with his brother, and to begin that process of healing. So this is such an interesting deck. It's monochromatic, as you can see, shades of black and grey and white. And it's really, really interesting. Let's take a look at the sun and the moon first of all. I think I've lost them now because I've done so many takes of this. They'll be at the back, I expect. Yeah, here we go. So we've got the bull and the horse for the sun and the moon. And we have got the Five of Pentacles, and this one's interesting because we think of like loss and poverty and those feelings of despair. I certainly think there would be some crying involved, but if we think about lack mindset, so which is I know it's attitude, but it's perception to a degree, perception, lack mindset, how we look at things. So this is such an interesting deck. The other one I wanted to show you is the Four of Pentacles. So again, we're talking finance and money here, but we're talking balance, finding a balance, striking a balance, and he's called this one the Witch. So as witches, you know, we look to find balance in everything we do. So I think that's a really, really interesting deck. He's named all of the cards, including the major arcana. So for example, Strength is called the Tree, and doesn't that just make perfect sense? So this is a really, really interesting deck. I haven't got the original guidebook. I actually won this in a competition on Instagram, and Dan sent me a PDF. I'm not even sure if I've still got that, to be honest. Sorry, Dan. But I'm not even sure if you can get these cards still. But if you do, there will be a guidebook to go with those. I think this is one of the original prototypes. So yeah, that's definitely more of an intermediate deck than a beginner's deck. So I just thought I'd talk about some books that are really helpful and to look at some of the books that are available. I've picked 3 to show you, so I'm just going to do this quickly because I'm sure you've got all the information you already need. I bought this book right back at the beginning when I was learning, and to be honest, it's called Tarot Made Easy, and there's nothing wrong with this book. It's full of brilliant information about tarot numerology and the different suits and stuff, but I found this book really, really hard. It's just lists and lists of long individual meanings for each card and different situations, and to be honest, that just didn't really work for me in terms of developing a system. It's still a useful book. If you see books when you're out and about on tarot, perhaps you're at a car boot sale or a charity shop, then pick them up by all means. There's always something interesting that you can get from each book. But in terms of learning tarot simply and easily, I've got 2 recommendations. So the first is Everyday Tarot. This lady is known online as Biddy Tarot. Her name is Bridget Esselmont, and she is an excellent tarot teacher. She keeps it really, really simple. She just gets the Rider-Waite system down so that you can understand it, and then you can develop it from there. The only other book that I wanted to recommend is actually called The Only Tarot Book You'll Ever Need, and this is by Skye Alexander and Mary Shannon, and this sets out like card numerology, the numbers of the tarot, the colours, really, really simply, and then it does go through each card and it goes through all the suits and what they mean. So these are probably the 2 books that I personally have come across that I really, really enjoy. I think they're really, really useful. But again, you know, if you're in a charity shop and you see a book for tarot for 50p, buy it. You can't go wrong with Well, you can go wrong with too much information sometimes, but there might just be something in that book. There might be a handful of things that just really stand out to you and just really stick in your brain that help you on this journey. If we think of the major arcana as being the Fool's journey from 0 to 22 and how you develop as the Fool goes along, think of your tarot journey like that as well. So you're going to learn the basic system to begin with, and then you're going to develop what you've learned and your tarot practice will flourish. So yeah, just invest what you can, and if you've got any questions then feel free to send them my way. I'm going to finish the video up now because we've got the strumming going on in the background, which you can probably hear. So I'd love to hear about your tarot experiences, how you got into tarot, what deck you bought first, what decks really helped you, what books helped you. Maybe you're just starting out now, or maybe you're a bit scared of tarot and you're a bit scared to go there. Let me know in the comments where you're at, and if you enjoyed this video then please hit subscribe. It's lovely to have you here. Hitting subscribe tells YouTube that my videos are worth sharing to other like-minded people, and if you hit the bell notification you'll never miss another video. Also give me a thumbs up by hitting the like button if you can. Again, it tells YouTube that my videos are worth watching, and it tells me which videos you guys like, which ones you don't, and whether I should continue. So thanks so much for watching this, especially if you got this far. Take care of yourselves and each other. Love and blessings.